topics ranging from life on the farm, health and wellness, and race and social justice.
We feature guests each week with expertise in activism, entrepreneurship, healing, and food justice.
So come join your girls live every Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Clean Greens Living Live Show. You can even call in and be a part of the show. See you then.
This is your Rainier Avenue Radio World community update on free online exercise classes. The YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap counties has launched more than 60 free online exercise classes and youth programs to support the health and well-being of the community. Classes include boot camp, yoga, weightlifting, boxing, tai chi, and more. Find classes at ymca360.org. No membership is needed to access these classes at ymca360.org.
This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. I'm also the owner of Seattle Love Broker, a relationship consulting and matchmaking company. Tune in every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. to listen to intriguing, informative, and entertaining guests share stories of their past and vision for the future of our community.
Friends of Waterfront Seattle presents Pier Sounds, an October concert series at Pier 62 on the downtown Seattle waterfront, featuring sensational regional bands and artists, including Yvonne Lewis and Friends on October 9th. These free, family-friendly concerts welcome everyone to come and enjoy live music and the sights and sounds of Seattle's waterfront. Pier 62 was home to one of the most iconic and popular music events in the city, Summer Nights on the Pier. Pier Sounds concert series forges this memory with new energy and music on a revitalized Pier 62 to reignite the sense of celebration and community in the place where it all began. The Pier Sounds new concert series at Pier 62.
This is Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
You're listening to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Heartbeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color, we're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through Heartbeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio this evening. I have a bad echo in my mic right now. Welcome to our show this evening. We're excited. Joy Stanford is joining me again tonight as co-host, and we're excited that we get to bring back one of our candidates for Seattle City Council. So let's bring Joy Pratt Stanford on with me here. Good evening, Joy. How are you? I think your mic is muted.
Muted. Oh, hey!
I got to hear my hello.
Super excited.
I know, this is a good one. This is somebody we love dearly. Let's welcome in Nikkita Oliver to the show this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening.
We are always glad to see you.
So glad to share space with y'all this evening.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back post-primary. So we were watching your numbers really close. We're excited that you got through. I've been stalking your fundraising page to make sure you're staying in front. It looks like you are.
Yep.
I want to hear how the campaign's going. I see you're out campaigning every day, rain, sleet, or snow. Let's hear what's going on.
Yeah, we are doing phenomenal. It was wonderful to exit the primary in the first place, and very honored to come in at a little under 41%. We do have a fully funded campaign. So thanks to the Democracy Voucher Program and the well over 5,000 residents plus who have donated to the campaign, either via democracy vouchers or cash contributions, we were able to raise the maximum amount that we could raise by the end of June. And fortunately, within the primary as well, when our opponent reached the cap, we were able to have the cap lifted and many Seattleites made additional contributions to the campaign, or even first-time contributions. So it's very exciting to have, honestly, thousands of people. We have more contributors to the Nikkita for 9 campaign than all other city council races combined together. So I think it shows just really the power of the movement and the work that so many people are doing, not just for the campaign, but throughout our communities. We also have launched a very significant field strategy in the general, not unlike our commitment during the primary, where we door knocked first 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, and then 4 days a week. We're starting with 2 days a week right now with a ton of volunteers and community partners supporting that effort. Phone banking, text banking, already off the ground. So if you're wanting to volunteer, please go to our website, www.nikkitafor9.com. And we have tons of ways to volunteer at multiple accessibility levels, because we know that, COVID-19 is still very much impacting our community. So how can we keep everyone safe within their level of need, safety, and accessibility? And then we're also launching community listening posts. So really going in heavy on participatory policy making, because we believe that the way you campaign is emblematic of the way that you will govern in office. And so we really want folks to see, what does it look like to have electeds that work hand in hand with our grassroots organizers, our most impacted community members, to build policy from the grassroots up that changes the material conditions that our community members are living in. And with each of those community listening posts, doing mutual aid work. How can we see our communities uplift each other and care for each other in a time of still great need? We've raised a lot of money, and it would be a shame for those dollars to only be about name notoriety of the candidate. We want to make sure we feed people. We want to make sure we support people. We want to make sure that folks know what resources are available to them to support them, and continuing to sustain during this really challenging time. So much happening. So excited for the general. There are, I feel like, hundreds of forums happening and meetings.
There are.
And as a full-time working candidate, I'm very cognizant of just how challenging this effort is for so many people, and hope that we can continue to pave the way for everyday working people who have to have full-time jobs where they run for office to have a pathway to victory.
Mm-hmm. It's so inspiring to see, Nikkita, because the other communities, from my opinion, I had a conversation this afternoon with somebody in another community. What Seattle is doing, what you are doing, is leading the way for new politics, for a new day of what it means to be an elected official, for someone who's standing for people and not just trying to fit into the patriarchy and the system that currently exists. That is not consistent with other cities and how they are running campaigns right now. So it's so admirable. It's why we wanted to make sure we had you back on to highlight all the work that you're doing. I mean, I see the people out in the snow and cold, and people are out wanting change. And so you are representing that.
Yeah. And what's most powerful for me is just seeing so many excited community members and really having the opportunity to knowledge share. I think running for office, y'all know this as pioneers yourself.
We're pioneers. Oh.
I mean, it's challenging. It wasn't built for us. It has not. It's not a place that we're necessarily wanted or welcomed, but folks like yourself and many others have really paved the way for me to have this opportunity. And so as a campaign, we want to make sure that we're skill sharing. So we're teaching other folks how to cut turf, and what does that mean, and how do you organize your own door knocking. And so that's also really exciting. Groups like Seattle Democratic Socialists of America are working with us on training up their own people on turf cutting to benefit the campaign. But in the long run, what that does is benefit, our future movements. How do you door knock? How do you cut turf? How do you identify, different neighborhoods or different voters at different levels? And what's the best way to engage people? In the long run, while this is about winning a seat in the big picture, it is about making sure that our communities have the skills necessary, not just to win in electoral politics, but to use the platform of electoral politics for mobilizing towards solutions that actually meet our needs.
When you use the term cut turf, for our listeners who don't understand what that means, what does that mean?
Thank you. And a political education moment. I think a lot of folks think you just go out and you just door knock randomly on any door. And there are various databases that depending on how you're running for office, who you're endorsed by, who you're running for office with, what's your party affiliation, you'll have access to different databases. And those databases will have information about how voters have voted in the past, how likely they might be to vote in a particular direction in the future. Have they moved? Do they even still live there? And so even while we're so we cut turf so that we know what doors to knock on, but simultaneously we take down data. Have people moved? Are they still in the neighborhood? And door knocking also gives us a lot of great information about how neighborhoods are or are not shifting. And so while cutting turf right now is helping us know what doors to knock on, knocking on doors is letting us know how our neighborhoods have or have not shifted. So it is just a really important cyclical strategy of knowledge sharing, skill building, and building our community's ability to self-organize.
What doors are you knocking on? Are you doing persuasive, or are you doing the GOTV, or do you have your volunteers? Because I think some people don't understand that a lot of times, and Cindi, you remember this, we as candidates, we're having those harder conversations than our volunteers are. So how are those conversations going?
As a campaign right now, we're mostly doing persuasive. During the primary election, I went to almost every single door knocking event that we did, excluding ones when I had to work during my full-time job, and knocked doors at a majority of them. The general election is much tighter.
Yeah.
And I don't have as much time to get to be out at the canvases, because usually at the same time there's a forum, a community event, or a constituent call. So I am doing a lot more of the being out in community, doing the candidate role that none of our staff members can't go to a forum for me. And so things have changed slightly from the primary to the general, where I'm not on as many doors, but I am definitely in a lot more spaces. Folks are having in-person forums, which is very different than what we had during the primary. Everything was pretty much online or on Zoom, which also then contributed to my ability to be able to door knock every weekend for many, many months, because it's just easier to move between Zoom and a door than it is to move between. I think last Saturday I went to our door knocking in West Seattle, went up to Wedgwood, up from Wedgwood down to Renton for the Seattle Film Candidates Forum, from Renton back into the Central District for a celebration with How's Our Neighbors, and eventually made my way back to Rainier Beach, which ended up being about a total of 4 hours of driving. And so, the general is structured a little bit different than the primary, but I am so grateful for our volunteers who are coming out, knocking doors and phone banking. Really, the general election would be impossible without you.
Well, that's amazing. I just remember 2020, phone banking was all we could do because nobody wanted you at their door. And so that was like 7 hours, sometimes a day on the phone between fundraising and just talking to voters. So somewhere between 3.5 hours fundraising, 3.5 hours phone banking. I get it, but it's good work. And we are happy that you are still in it and you are pushing, like Cindi said, where you don't fit. And I like that. And I like that you're pushing against that. That gives me hope. And I don't even get to vote for you, but it gives me hope. So
I always like, when I ask my questions, I like to educate the public to understand what's involved in what it takes for any of us to go out and run for office. That, things like what you described about cutting turf and access to NGP and all the technology and the ways to strategize. people don't understand that all of that costs money. To have access to those databases, it's not just handed to you to do.
Correct.
So there's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on to strategize how best to utilize your time and where to go. And you've got such a huge territory to cover. How do you, I know last time you were on, I still snicker at how politically correct you answered my question, but how do you feel you are? I mean, I looked at your fundraising compared to your opponent. You are ahead as of the last report I saw. How do you feel you're going to fare in this? I mean, I know you can't predict an outcome, but what's your general sense about where you're going to land against? What's her name, Sarah?
Yes. My opponent's name is Sarah Nelson. And, I think that's a great question. To be honest, we've entered into the general election feeling very good and very excited to know that 40% of voters who voted in the primary went for us. And 14% went for the candidate probably nearest to us, Breonna Thomas, in political philosophy, which means, as we're doing our persuasion work, really pursuing voters, wooing Breonna's voters is a huge part of the work that we're doing. And that actually gives me quite a bit of hope about what the outcome will be in the general election. We also know that in general elections, more progressive people vote. We tend not to vote as frequently in primaries. And so in the general, there is a strong likelihood, especially with the universities being back, that more, young voters, more progressive voters, more Black and Brown voters will vote in the general election. We also have won some really key endorsements. So The Stranger, The Urbanist, the MLK Labor Council, One America Votes have all been really significant endorsements for us in building a strong coalition. And then in the legislative districts the Democratic legislative districts where I'm not necessarily eligible in all of them to be endorsed because I am running third party. But in a lot of those districts, they have chosen non-endorsement over endorsing our opponent, which is a good sign. I mean, those non-endorsements have been winning by a significant amount or a significant percentage. And often within those meetings, there are a lot of folks advocating for support of our campaign because they see the value of building a progressive coalition. Just because someone doesn't necessarily call themselves a Democrat doesn't mean that we don't have values, deep values that we share across our efforts that we want to see around racial and economic justice. And in fact, something that would really benefit the left is our ability that we grow our ability to build coalitions across the left that are not necessarily dependent on what you label yourself as, but are rooted in the values and the policies that we're wanting to move forward on. And we've seen amazing support and turnout in those spaces. And so very excited about the grassroots support. I think it's worth noting, no matter what, there is a base that's going to vote for Sarah. The question for us, though, is, especially in GOTV, how are we motivating those folks who are otherwise disillusioned by the problems in electoral politics, who have felt disenchanted by the lack of representation, or maybe they've been courted and wooed in other elections and then forgotten once the term started? How are we getting out to those voters, mobilizing them, encouraging them, building relationship that makes them want to get out to the ballot box and then actually maintain that relationship? Because it would be a shame for us to get people to vote and then continue to fail them the same way they've been failed in the past. Our goal is to build people's hope and their vision for what could be achieved, not just through our office, but there are significant other races happening in our region, not just in Seattle, but across our region, that I think could point towards some really big changes at the King County and local levels.
Nikkita, what you said a couple of minutes ago that I think is really important to highlight for the community. Historically, for those people who are not involved in politics, understanding the endorsement process, how it's historically run, is pretty, nasty would be an understatement, but it's how the engine of politics lines up behind candidates. And normally the engine chooses and puts all their effort and money and friends and everything behind that candidate. The fact that LDs, legislative districts, and organizations are now choosing to non-endorse is a strong statement, because in the past, the only thing they've done is they line up, because if they don't line up, there is a consequence to them in the future for not saying one way or the other. And the fact that people are now taking that stand is very indicative of the change that you are speaking to. And it is driving power in a different way. We are starting to move the power structures here. And that's why your campaign, your race is so important. People need to pay attention to what you're doing. And so I'm just thrilled that you are staying at it this way and that you have built the momentum. And I hope every one of the people who listen to this show, particularly outside of the Seattle district, those who are still engrossed in the disgusting local political engine that is not progressing people, need to pay attention to this. Let me ask you, Nikkita, November 3rd is going to hit, and Lorena Gonzalez is in as the mayor of Seattle. What will that look like in the first 90 days for you?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I actually feel, when I look at the slate of folks that could be elected at the Seattle city level, really thinking about Nicole Thomas Kennedy pulling through in the city attorney's race, probably very unexpected to a lot of people. And honestly, Pete Holmes being out was a real shakeup.
Yeah. We know. We interviewed her last week.
It was very unexpected to the political establishment. And she took first in her primary. I think that's also significant. Seeing, Teresa Mosqueda really doesn't have any serious competition and probably will fly through the general. And Lorena Gonzalez, I think, has shown efforts to shift the way that she governs over the last year and a half. And so there is a real strong possibility to have the executive branch and the legislative branch share the same goals of housing for all, not just rapidly getting folks housed, but a commitment to build green, social, affordable housing for the city to stop kicking the can down the road and finally do what we need to do, which is to build deeply affordable housing and preserve our currently affordable units, and to build density throughout the city rather than expecting the same neighborhoods, Rainier Beach, Central District, Ballard, to all take on the density and think that that's going to respond to the crisis. It's just simply not. I think that we have the possibility of really pursuing progressive revenue generation options at least the city level that has not been a possibility in a long time. If we can get candidates whose real perspective is about meeting the needs of our most marginalized and vulnerable residents, and understand that those are the same folks that are most marginalized are also the ones that pay the most in taxes, whether we're talking about property taxes or sales taxes. Our regressive tax system places the burden on workers, families, folks without homes. And so doing the work to transform our upside down tax code as much as we can at the city level is going to be an important part of generating revenue that is not on the backs of those that are already suffering most. And there's some real opportunity there to make that happen, and a lot of alignment. And personally, I am really excited about work around land, cannabis equity, talking deeply about, the impact of gentrification. And as we talk about changing zoning codes, we have to simultaneously talk about anti-displacement and anti-gentrification policies. Otherwise, what we'll do is we will open up to neighborhood residential, and the private market will flourish, and we'll continue to see people displaced. So within our first 90 days, for our office to design and begin to get in the process of implementing a shared and aligned vision for ending homelessness in the region, because the Regional Homelessness Authority is a huge shift from the way that we've been doing things prior to that intergovernmental entity coming into form. Really, the city has just chosen whatever direction it wants to go and has been very dependent upon various pet projects of various council members, which isn't getting us out of the crisis. And so hopefully being able to align strategies regionally, but also locally through the Regional Homelessness Authority can give us good direction. And so building that relationship and that collaboration, establishing our funding priorities for the next 4 years, talking about how the city can actually more fine tune our strategy around preventing homelessness. So while the Regional Homelessness Authority is doing the work of helping us mitigate and help those that are in crisis right now, we should be doing the work of building the preventative, the upstream solutions that keep people from ever entering into homelessness in the first place. And so we have a role in this strategy. And in the first 90 days, my office needs to be very focused on strengthening that collaboration and then preparing ourselves for various supplemental budgets, putting more tenants and renters protections in place. And, HB 1410, which is a state level piece of legislation, which will help to keep our elders, our seniors, our homeowners from losing their homes based on unpaid property taxes, is something that we need to be making sure people know about and they have access to. So there's a lot of work to do there. And then really looking at data. People always talk about data like we don't have data, but we have lots of data on what the problem is, how effective or ineffective our systems are, and what are the solutions that work, and using that to continue to fine tune our strategy. I'm very focused on housing. So getting a list of all the available public lots of land within the city will be an important piece of that. Who are our co-ops, our community land trusts, and our PDAs to start making significant efforts moving on addressing the housing crisis right now is going to be really important.
That's awesome. So you already answered my question, housing. That was going to be my next question. What do you need from us? What do you need from the community? Is there anything that your campaign is lacking still?
The strongest part of our campaign during the primary was people who got their loved ones to vote. Within our communities that have been burned by electoral politics, reaching out to folks, voting with them, helping them get their ballots turned in, reminding them to vote is probably one of the most powerful strategies for Black, Native, Brown, low income, working class communities, because we are relational by nature. And so I cannot tell you the number of people who reached out to me to say, I got 5 households connected to me to vote for you, because they went to their loved ones, they text them. I mean, some people had outdoor gatherings where they asked their friends and their loved ones to bring their ballots and said, let's vote together. Let's vote as a community, because there are things in the ballot that maybe people didn't understand, or there were folks that they didn't know enough about. It can be very intimidating when you look at that ballot and you're like, I don't know who these people are. And there are a lot of names, and there were a lot of names. So I think the most significant strategy is if you are a person who always votes, or who's plugged into politics, or who's thinking about voting, pull on the coattails of the people around you and get them to vote. Ask them, are they registered to vote? Are our freshly turned 18 young people set up to vote and ready to go? And do our elders and our seniors who may not have access to a ballot drop box or don't have regular access to their own mail, are we supporting them in their effort to be voting? Are we driving them? Are we meeting them? Are we calling young people that might be in their 20s and 30s and just deeply entrenched in their life and their work, helping them understand how their vote does matter? I think is really significant. Those are some of the biggest things. The last thing I'll say, though, is there's a strong chance that our opponent will catch up with us in fundraising, because we cannot fundraise again until the cap is lifted. And so if by that chance she meets us where we're at, and we're able to have the cap lifted, we want to be able to reach out to community and say, hey, can you continue to make another contribution to the campaign, so that we can continue to build our influence across the city? And at our election day event, we're going to forego the typical party and actually do mutual aid work, as inspired by the history and the legacy of the Black Panther Party, to really be out in community, meeting needs and feeding people, because that is the kind of council office we intend to be.
Awesome.
Nice.
We are out of time, but there is one thing I want to say before we say goodbye to you. First off, thank you for coming back on.
Yes.
I want to remind our listeners, I'm just reading some of the comments coming through. I want to remind our listeners what Heartbeat Radio is. Heartbeat Radio is designed and gives a platform to brown and Black people, particularly who are underrepresented and need a voice. And I bring on both political people and business people to move this engine of politics and business that is marginalizing us. Rainier Avenue Radio does have other political shows, and other candidates do come on. Your opponent has been on Seattle Here and Now. So for the person who is putting information out about me bringing Sarah on, my platform is designed for brown and Black people who do not have equal access and opportunity in this world. Nikkita Oliver, thank you for coming back on with us today. We are rooting for you. We were going to watch you go through the finish line. Blessings. We're going to take a quick 3-minute break, and we'll be back after the break here.
Thank you so much.
Tax, I think of Black business. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Startup.
Who is that?
Driving my sweet AMC Pacer through the car wash. I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. You missed a spot.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is stay at home and isolate? Correct.
Coronavirus for 200.
Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine? Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
The beat of the Fox with nastiness is back on K-Fox Night Beat.
Yo, what's the deal? It's the legendary Hall of Fame DJ Mixmaster Ice from UTFO.
What's up? Who you thought this is? This is Sir Mix-a-Lot.
And this is Terry Lewis.
And I'm Grand Mixer GMS.
What's up, y'all? This is DJ Third Degree.
This is JJ Hudson from the High Children family.
Sunday nights from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's K-Fox Night Beat with DJ Nastiness.
Bringing back the memories.
Bringing back the memories.
Bringing Seattle's hottest music.
Bringing Seattle's hottest music. Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
That's right. Noi. Peace.
There is no secret why Downbeat Magazine calls this Seattle's most important annual jazz event. The 33rd Annual Earshot Jazz Festival hits Seattle stages October with one-of-a-kind live jazz performances and video live streams all the way through November 7th. This year's Earshot Jazz Festival features established masters like Diane Reeves, Chuco Valdez, Dee Daniel, and red-hot young stars like Theo Croker, Emmanuel Wilkins, and Samara Joy, celebrating both Seattle's history and its future in the world of jazz. Earshot teams up with community partners like Langston, the Royal Room, and Rainier Avenue Radio to showcase Seattle's own resident artists. Tickets and more information are available online at earshot.org. That's earshot.org. Once again, Seattle's most important annual jazz event. Earshot Jazz Festival, hitting stages early October all the way through November 7th. Call for more information.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio. Half that up the sacks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
Welcome back to Heartbeat Radio. I'm the host, Cindi Bright. with Joy Stanford with me tonight. We just had another great interview with candidate Nikkita Oliver. So that was pretty exciting to hear. She had come on at the beginning journey of her run. And so it was nice to watch her come through the primary. And what do you think, Joy?
There's so much I want to say, but let's go. I get to
go ahead and say it. Go ahead.
I'm just surprised by the anger in the comments. So I was just like, oh wow, because I don't watch that. I have our screen up and we're talking, so I'm not watching that. So I was just a little surprised, but I'm glad to know that her opponent had the opportunity to come on someone else's show. I think you've always been very transparent about your show though, and why you do your show. And that is one of the reasons why I joined in on doing it with you, is because in 2018, we didn't have this platform.
I'm not doing the show strictly for politics, and I'm not doing
business. It's nonprofits. I mean, we've had nonprofit women on here. It's like, come on.
It's about amplifying the voice and giving opportunity to people that don't get it. And so, many of the other people that run, particularly people who are non-BIPOC, they have so much more advantage. And so every time a brown or black person gets a little bit of something that helps them, then we have to deal with, backlash and comments from people about, I'm not here to advocate for Sarah. My platform is to help marginalized communities and to give the voice to help drive progressive change. So somebody's got.
I was just a little shocked. I was just like, "Whoa, where'd that come from?"
Well, it's to me, it's classic, and I'm not trying to be nasty to anybody. You're free to say what you want to say, but you also need to receive what I say when I say something back, because
you know the information.
And know we're trying to help. We're trying to help people that don't have the advantage,
the opportunities,
and so that's why I do it. So anyhow, here we are.
The second half of our show is very near and dear to me because I get my Oprah moment with you.
I'm turning the second half over to Joy. So
first of all, let me pour my wine, which I will not drink until we're off air.
I hope we're on.
Everyone should pour a glass of wine or water while they're reading Cindi Bright's book. The Color of Courage, Crushing Racism in America. I was, first of all, super, how excited I was about you finishing the book, because I was with you as you were like, I got to finish this book. So I was really excited that you did, and it was published. But my first question to you is probably the one thing that I was reading throughout you telling your story of what happened to you is, when you look back on this story of what you had to endure, I don't understand how you survived. And so that's my first question. What's the one thing you learned about yourself when you got done with this book, especially that first chapter? And you can see I have highlighted, I got highlights all throughout this book and just good information. But I want to know, how did you survive when you were going through what you were going through?
Boy, that is a tough one. How did I survive it? I felt there were moments where I felt like I didn't. Anybody who, I don't want to give the punchline with people who haven't read it, but when you hear the story of me being taken down and not just the takedown, but the way the company, which is the white supremacist cultures that many of us still work in, many people. How do you navigate that, and how do you come out holding your head up high? My head was not high in 2014. The world didn't know what I was going through because I kept my image up to the world of strong, resilient Cindi. But Cindi was not strong and resilient at that time. that when a machine comes after you, and it was a machine, when a machine comes after you to tear you apart, it's very personal. And it's very personal.
They used a lot of personal stuff.
A lot of personal stuff against
which
me.
The white woman gave them, which leads me into my next question.
Yes.
Because that's probably my number 2 chapter I like the best. How did you write that? Knowing that this woman had given them all this information, how were you able to just put that on paper?
Well, that woman was my friend, so let's be transparent about it. I was friends with her, and so a searing betrayal of your friend to tell your personal life, your personal business, to give a company ammunition to fire you, is one of the lowest forms of low that anybody could ever experience, the betrayal of a friend like that. And the reason why she did it was for a man, right? That
she no longer has.
No, she's married to him. Oh yeah. So there's
the story.
There's a lot that my editor will tell you. I mean, I had a lot of sleepless nights because I'd wake up like hyperventilating, going, I got to take that part out. Like I better not say that, or because I have not told the world about her because I'm not going to stoop to her.
But you did put the chapter in here called White Women.
Yes, I did. Oh, thank you, Gwen. She's talking about change is not easy. It's not. I did put a chapter in it. And that chapter was very difficult because, as you heard me at the book release party, I wanted to give honor to all the many white women friends I have.
Correct.
And so it's incredibly difficult. I'm not going to lie. How do you discern who are the people you really trust and who do you not trust anymore? I can't tell you to this day. There is something around my heart that I guard now, even trying to see the best in people. And you know this about me. I struggle with, I'm always trying to help other people, and I'm always giving. And even when I feel like I'm giving, they're happy to take. And the first thing they want to do is destroy me instead of seeing themselves. And so I'm more protective of my heart and my space. And I do still honor the wonderful women, the wonderful white women that stand with me.
Amen.
And so, I'm not.
We've talked about that before, though.
Yeah.
We think it's a product of running for office too. We're way more protective of our circle than we were prior to running for office.
I still have some lessons to learn there. I've been talking to you about. It's hard because I genuinely want to see the good in people, and I genuinely do. And I understand what fuels their behavior, but they have an accountability piece also. And so where does their accountability come in for their own behavior?
Exactly.
That's the difficult part. And so I would say that the more conscious I have become about people. And I thought after 30 years in HR, I knew people, and I didn't know people until after this trial. Like I was like, a lot of what I read and saw and heard during the trial just took me backwards. I could not believe some of the things that I read and saw because it just blew my mind. And I would say this, that even those people that we think we know people truly.
Nope.
And
it's sometimes a hard and sad lesson to learn.
It is. But Joy, it takes, like, I'm a warrior. I tell people that all the time. I have to tell this story. I had to tell it because if I didn't tell it, I was allowing that story to define me, and it was keeping a lot of mess inside of me that I needed to get out. And so the book writing process was incredibly therapeutic, because the first version of this book, there were so many bad words. There were so many bad words in it, and it was just pages and pages of anger that came out of me, and that's how it started. And so it helped me a lot to go through that process of getting the book published. So
I'm glad it was cathartic for you. So in one chapter, you were talking about HR folks and understanding how they're gatekeepers. And so do you think HR people get into that business and know, and I'm new people and older, like seasoned folks. Do you think the gatekeepers know that they're gatekeepers, or do they figure that out when they get into the position, or is it the company?
Well,
because that was my question when I was reading. I was like, and I'm always thinking about myself and my story, and so I'm like,
I think it's both, Joy, and my book calls for the demolishment of HR.
That's where I was going. Yeah,
it's the worst. It's the worst function in any business, and I've been in three major companies in Seattle. It's awful, and so I would say on one level, HR people with power are cognizant of the power that they have, and anybody who is in charge of people's jobs and pay and all that sort of stuff has a lot of influence.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why brown and black people are afraid, because they can't trust these folks that you're supposed to be able to go to. I couldn't trust them, and I hated. I actually sat in the business. I didn't sit in HR, and I couldn't stand the HR department. So, and they knew it, and they viewed me as arrogant, and I viewed them as incompetent. And so, I was there to help run a business and look out for the people in the business and help resolve people problems, not dictate and control and manipulate people. And the HR function is full of people that manipulate and control and blackball and do horrible things to people. And so why do we even need that function anymore?
Exactly. And interesting enough, your book taught me more about the back office of HR, all the buzzwords, the change, what's it called? The change. Oh my God. Who knew that existed? And then the math on bonus structures for the C-level folks and VPs and higher ups, but nothing but 3% to 5%, maybe 7 if you have a good year.
No idea. You have no idea.
None.
And I have more, not a book, but I have curriculum that I've put together that I will sell and teach people, because there's a lot for people to unpack and learn about how that's done. A couple weeks ago, one of a former Expedia executive and I had lunch together, and she was saying to me, she read the book, and she was saying, she had took a year off. She took a sabbatical, and she said, for exactly what you said in your book, Cindi, there were 10,000 people in that company. And she said, I was one of 23 women who actually had equity in the company. And so she was able to take a year off work because she had access to that kind of money. And so that's not, brown and black people are kept from that. And there's so much, I gave it in the book, it's high level. I didn't go down into the trenches of how it actually all works, but there's a lot in the weeds that people will want to know this information, because it's game-changing information if you know this when you are either asking for raises or negotiating your way into a company. And so I do plan on sharing it with the world here soon.
I know you've taught me a lot on the side, so I feel very equipped most days. That does help me to get to the next question of, first of all, who's the book for? I had somebody ask me, who's that book for? And I was like, corporate, politicos, nonprofits, small business. Like
it's for any organization, because and the way I put together a workshop on it, the way that this book is structured is with characters in it that everybody can relate to. So if you're an organization and you're the people, you'll be able to relate to who the characters are in the book. And if you are leaders, you have to, I'm advocating or teaching them how to look at their own reflection and which character do they fit into, because the book, I didn't write this to slam people and corporate. I wrote it to awaken corporate America, because they don't understand, when the Wells Fargo CEO that I mentioned in my book stands up and says, we don't have enough Black candidates.
That's not true.
It's not the truth. You need to understand your own what's happening in your organization, because without you having that kind of cognizance, including your own ignorance, to be on media and say something like that, if you don't understand yourself, if you don't understand the reflection of what's happening inside, there's no way you're going to attract anybody to come in to those kind of environments. And so solutions, I offer solutions, as you see in the book. I think, off the cuff, they'll probably think they're wild and radical left, but they're calling for the same thing that they have. And so we start pushing them to start, having, I think the term I use is an equitable split in profitability. If you start getting rid of all these gatekeepers and taking all of that overhead money out of your organization and start standing up businesses that brown and Black people have to help solve those problems, you're solving a multitude of problems when you do that. And so I'm trying to challenge the way that the organizations think, because it's just not working for the brown and Black people. And so if they want something different, they're going to have to do something different. Right. So I gave them a framework to think from.
I love that. And you touched on it a little bit, that you've got curriculum coming out, because, I've been spreading the word about your book and how you can come into companies and help. So that's my next question is, how can you go into a company and help them if they're interested? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I speak, so I do go into, in fact, I meant to tell Nikkita, I'm going to be speaking at an event that she's speaking at next month. Good. Interesting is what is happening. So some of the things that I see happening. So there is a particular organization that it's Black led by a Black woman, and that Black woman is reaching out into the Black community and bringing the Black people in to help her organization and have us come in and speak and have us come in and talk about different things. So she is already demonstrating as a leader how to tap into her network outside of the company. These larger companies don't tap into networks outside. You can't, it's so difficult for anybody to get in. So she's demonstrating that, and I go in and I'll speak and I'll be provocative in what I talk about, and I'll leave enough seeds so that they can start to harvest inside that company when I'm not there. And so you plant those things, or, the workshop I have, I'm sure I'm going to be doing that here soon with the company. And so, you go in and you engage them. My approach is not to shame them. It is to engage them and get them to think. And so, we have to start from that place of them understanding what our experience is.
Yes.
And if they don't understand the experience, they're not going to recognize it, because they're surrounded by nothing but white folks in the leadership roles. And so every whisper that is said about joy is going to be believed by the decision makers, because they are only surrounded by people who are giving their slant and their narrative about what joy is. And I call for you. So, look, if you don't even have cultural I just think anybody who's in any leadership or supervisory position, if you ain't got Black people in your family someplace, or you have not been exposed and understand, you have no business leading people. Because
and don't say I have one Black friend that you've never been to their house or had lunch with, or had dinner, or been on vacation with, or been to their kid's birthday party. Come on, it runs deeper than just having one Black friend. I can't say
to that point, just something funny in Bellevue. everybody knows Dana Frank, who lives in Seattle. Do you know Dana?
No,
Everybody
I don't.
asks me when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, do you know Dana Frank?" Because she's the one Black friend that many people have. It's comical to me, and I can't. I've never told Dana that, but maybe she'll listen to the show, or I'll tell her. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say, "Yeah, I know Dana."
But there was a young lady that lived in the town I lived in Port Orchard, and they said, "Do you know Tammy?" And I was like, "Yes, I know Tammy." Like, are we the only two Black women in Port Orchard, Washington? What the heck? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I want to tell you the best for me passage in this book, Color of Courage. They continue to act oblivious to racial issues while they collect their fat paychecks and add to their cashmere collections. I highlighted that. I'm like, wow. Okay.
You picked up a lot of my cynical stuff in there too. Like, it's just so ridiculous what we are exposed to and what we have to sit and watch, right?
Exactly. But you know what? Just ending on something fun. Tell me about the quotes in between. I know the quote in the beginning is Aaron did your son did your forward, which can I just tell you is amazing. But each chapter is divided by a wine ring and then a quote either from a person or a song, which I knew everyone, including the Hillsong one. But tell me about those.
Well, I should pull up my book here so I have it in front of me. Like, the first one I did was from Tasha Cobbs when I said, God will break you to position you. I put that one there because at the time I didn't know. I mean, I remember standing in the middle of my living room, I kid you not, and I was crying and I said, God, how come I have to, why is this happening to me? I was trying to do the right thing. Now, when I look back though, that was about being positioned, because had that not happened, I would not be here today. Right. I would not have run for office. I would not have started Heartbeat Radio, and I certainly would not have been out here as a warrior fighting for us. And so
access to those folks who are making the comments, access for brown and Black folks.
Yes. So that was about positioning, and that song helped heal and helped me to know that was the purpose in that time in my life.
I mean, you got the Isley Brothers, Chaka Khan, Tasha Cobb.
There's just some.
I was like, oh, I know that song.
How about the Isley Brothers Harvest for the World?
Isley Brothers, that was my favorite.
Or the White Women chapter. And I did that because they believe that they're the only ones, I'm lumping everybody together, that deserve the harvest, but the rest of us here. And so I'm planting that seed about, when will there be a harvest for the world? That the world is not just you, the world is other people. So I quote Colin Kaepernick, and by the way, he's got a movie coming out. Did you see that? He's got a movie coming out about his life next month.
Netflix?
I don't remember which one it's on.
I hope so. Yes, get your copy everywhere. Yeah, books are sold.
Yeah.
It is a must read. I want to say, I know you put your heart and soul into this book because I watched you while you were in the midst of it. And so to our listeners, to anybody who's in corporate America, politics, nonprofits, this book is just the beginning. I think you going into these spaces and working with these folks to start those hard conversations and help people build a better ecosystem within whatever industry they're in, this is where it starts. Grab a copy.
I appreciate that, Joy. Let me just tell you, next Thursday, I'll be on Good Day Los Angeles. So
I saw that on LinkedIn. Yes.
I appreciate that you highlighted.
Next stop, Good Morning America.
Yeah, I've been tagging CNN and tagging people in my posts. So hopefully I get some national attention with it. I appreciate that. And to our listeners tonight, thank you for, joining us and first half hearing from Nikkita Oliver, and then thank you for entertaining Joy and I talking on the second half about my book. We do have next week, our guests coming on next week are Brandy Donaghy out of Snohomish County. We have Joyce Shuey,
Mercer sister,
out of Bellevue, and potentially one other person. So she should confirm that this week. But we'll continue to have these conversations with the brown and black people who are putting themselves out there trying to go champion for change for us. So thank you to all of our listeners for joining us tonight. And we will see you all and get my book, The Color of Courage. I'll see you guys all next week. Have a good week, everybody.
That up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah.
Cheers.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.